Now let's look at a package of FastFire from SOLKOA. This package has been in, again, my little candy tin of fire starting goods for, again, a year, and is about the same age as the previously videoed package of WetFire. It was provided by SOLKOA in the spring of 2009, has been in the candy tin since the fall of 2010, and it's now the fall of 2011. You can see the packaging has been compressed. It's probably not airtight any longer, and we can expect the cube inside to be fairly broken up. Again, though, it's been in a hard case tin, and we'll see how it performs. So, you will note the packaging on WetFire is significantly heavier than the packaging on, the packaging on FastFire is significantly heavier than the packaging on WetFire. The WetFire packaging is plastic, and this is a foil material, a plastic coating on the outside of the foil. It's much more durable packaging. You can see, though, we have a lot of small chunks coming out that the SOLKOA FastFire cube, which is roughly twice the size of a WetFire cube, has broken down, and you've got one large chunk about the size of a WetFire cube, a chunk about half that size, and a bunch of smaller stuff. We'll start with this smaller stuff, since I do like these piles of broken up material, because I think they catch spark fairly well. Gives you a lot of surface area to catch a spark in. But let's try and get some spark here. And it's burning. It's burning quite large. Picking up the camera just a little bit to avoid getting it in the fire. You can see here this product is burning for a long time. It's also burning with a very sizable flame. This is very consistent with my expectations of the FastFire product. The flame sizes are bigger and the flame strength is greater than the WetFire product. SOLKOA has done whatever their formulation for their Tinder cubes. In my opinion, they've done a much better job than Ultimate Survival Technologies with their Tinder cube. You also notice that the breeze, as slight as it's been, it hasn't changed. While it was blowing out the 2.5-year-old WetFire, is not blowing out, or even coming close to blowing out, the 2.5-year-old FastFire. It's certainly causing a directional flame, but it's a very sizable flame, and it has a great duration. You could ignite a variety of materials off of this without much problem. You can see it burns hot. If this was at the center of your bundle of dry grass, dry bark, and light twigs, you would very quickly have a large fire onto which you could start adding slightly heavier materials. great flame duration here. This is burned for a long time before we actually get down to a flame that's the same small size as the largest of the WetFire flames. And it doesn't have the weakness of the WetFire flame, even in that small size. Here it is being shielded from a little bit of the breeze, and when I take my hands away, the flame is still there and roughly the same intensity, it's just directional. And that was with roughly a third of the material that's in a package of FastFire. Now this has started to go out, and there's a little bit of flame left actually, and it's quite hot. A great deal of heat's been generated and put in this piece of slate. One thing about the WetFire that I was showing earlier, when I was sweeping off the debris afterwards, the slate was not hot at all. It hadn't burned long enough. And now we've got quite a bit of heat built up in this piece of slate. Just going to go ahead and add this chunk here and let it start burning and see how long we go. Again, the breeze is causing a directional flame. When I shelter the flame a little bit, but even though it's causing it to be directional, it's certainly not blowing it out. With the WetFire product, it was not burning this big, and it was being blown out fairly regularly. At this point, we've reduced about half of this half-size chunk, which is actually about a quarter size of the full SOLKOA block. We've burned down half of this piece here, which is about an eighth of the total material. And if we wanted to, actually, we could separate that and get a little bit larger flame here. As you increase the surface area that's burning, your flame size tends to increase as well. Very hearty and very hot flame. And even now, it's very small, we still have quite a bit of flame. And it's taken us several minutes to burn down to this point. You can see this is a majority conversion of our fuel to ash. These small pieces here, if I wanted to, would probably light again, and even if they didn't, we've been burning for several minutes, so it's doubtful that I would actually need to relight these for any reason. And that's several minutes. You could have had a good sized fire going, and you'd still have this much left over. I'm going to actually replace this into its packaging. Fold the packaging up. And put it back in my kit. I would never do this with a piece of Ultimate Survival's WetFire. I would only do this with a chunk of SOLKOA's FastFire. And the reason for that is that once exposed to air, The WetFire has a life expectancy of maybe a few days, but even within that period you see immediate degradation within a day or two. So if I was going to put this back in my fire starting kit and expect to need to use it again soon, the choice is definitely FastFire. With the WetFire, you would need to be using it again soon, the next day or so. If you weren't going to use it before then, you should probably use a fresh cube of WetFire every time. The FastFire can be stored for over a month exposed to air and have no problem.